Something huge just happened at the United Nations. A single vote has reignited a debate that's been raging for centuries. A debate about justice, about history, and about the scars left behind by the transatlantic slave trade. And believe me, this vote shows just how divided the world still is on how to deal with one of history's darkest chapters.
Okay, just look at these numbers. The UN General Assembly voted on a resolution to declare the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. And the result? It was overwhelming. 123 nations voted in favor. But then you see this. Only 3 voted against: the US, Israel, and Argentina. And maybe most interesting of all, 52 nations, including the UK and the entire European Union, just sat it out. They abstained.
And this wasn't just a symbolic gesture, not at all. The resolution, which was led by Ghana for the African Union, lays out some really specific demands. A full, formal apology from the nations involved, a commitment to what it calls reparatory justice, and the return of cultural artifacts to their original homes. So this begs a massive question, right? With a landslide vote like that, how could a resolution condemning slavery possibly be controversial? Why would a powerhouse like the United States vote no? And why would the UK and so many European nations, countries whose modern wealth is so tied to this history, choose to stay on the sidelines?
To really get to the bottom of this, we first have to understand the case for reparations. Because for the people who support it, this isn't just about morality. They argue it's an absolute requirement to both history and law.
I mean, listen to this. This is a quote from Judge Patrick Robinson, who's a judge at the UN's highest court. He's basically saying the tide is turning. It's not a question of if reparations will happen, but when. From his perspective, the historical facts and the way international law is evolving make the case impossible to deny. And if you want to understand the scale of what we're talking about, look at this number. One report calculated that the UK alone owes $24 trillion. Now, that is a staggering figure, but it's not just pulled out of thin air. It's an attempt to quantify the incredible wealth that was built over centuries on the back of the slave trade, a debt that supporters say has never, ever been repaid.
And this really shows that the whole idea of justice here is about way more than just money. It's a whole package deal. It's about moral accountability, a real apology. It's about economic justice. It's about cultural healing by returning stolen treasures. And it's about making sure nothing like this can ever happen again.
All right, so that's the case for reparations. But what about the other side? Why the hard no and all those abstentions? Well, the arguments from countries like the US and the UK really boil down to 2 main things. One political and one based on a really fundamental principle of law. So first, let's talk about the political argument. The UK's ambassador put it this way: if you label one historical event the gravest crime, you risk creating a hierarchy of suffering. The concern is that it could unintentionally make other horrific events, other genocides, seem somehow less significant. Second, and this is the core legal argument, is a principle called non-retroactivity. It's a basic building block of law pretty much everywhere. It just means you can't be punished for breaking a law that didn't exist when you did the act. Think about it. It wouldn't be fair to get a speeding ticket today for going 70 yesterday if the speed limit was only lowered to 60 this morning. And that's exactly the argument being made here. The US and UK are saying that while the slave trade was, of course, morally repulsive, it wasn't actually illegal under international law at the time. The laws that banned slavery and defined crimes against humanity were mostly written in the 20th century. So they argue, from a purely legal standpoint, there's no basis for reparations now. Whenever you're talking about 400 years of history spread across the entire globe, it's never going to be a simple story. And these different views aren't just about dates and facts. They're about how we use history to understand who we are today, and that makes the whole thing incredibly complicated.
For instance, just look at the numbers. In political speeches, you might hear figures like 50 million, sometimes even hundreds of millions, of Africans being transported. But when you look at the deep historical work, like reports from UNESCO, the estimate is somewhere between 12 and 15.4 million people who survived that horrific journey. That huge gap shows just how hard it is to even agree on the basic facts.
And this timeline, it really backs up that legal point the West is making. Abolition slavery wasn't like flipping a switch. It was a slow, painful process. Britain ended the trade in 1807, sure, but it wasn't until 1926, over a century later, that the world came together and created a convention that officially made slavery illegal everywhere.
It's also important to see the bigger picture. The transatlantic trade was part of a global history of slavery.
You had the Muslim slave trade, which lasted even longer and moved millions of people. And slavery already existed in parts of Africa, with some African kingdoms and traders actively participating and profiting from selling people to the Europeans. It's a very complicated history.
So that brings us back to today and the really crucial question. If this were to happen, what would reparations even look like? Well, the supporters have a pretty clear vision, and it is definitely not about cutting personal checks for everybody.
The idea is to create a global fund, one that's managed internationally. So the money doesn't just go to governments. Instead, it would be invested in development projects, things that directly address the economic inequalities that many believe are the direct legacy of slavery. We're talking about tools, skills, education, things that empower communities for generations to come.
At the end of the day, for the people who are pushing for this, it's all about investing in the future. They want to reframe the entire conversation away from an old grievance and toward a new, forward-looking project of healing, development, and building a much more equal world.
And so that's where we're left, with this one huge, lingering question. After all this time, is this UN vote a real turning point? Is the world finally ready to build a new consensus on how to deal with one of history's greatest crimes? Or is this just another chapter in what will be an even more complicated and divided conversation? We'll have to wait and see.